Now it's time for another Board Game Brawl preview with Nick Meanahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com.
Hey folks, today we're going to take a look at a game that is currently seeking funding on Kickstarter. That game is called Mind, The Fall of Paradise, and is from What We Make Games. If you like what you see throughout the rest of this preview video, I'm going to encourage you to go to the official Kickstarter project page. There will be a link up in the top corner of your screen, as well as down in the description section underneath this video. Those links will take you to the page. You can find out more information than I could possibly tell you here, and hopefully you'll consider backing the project. Now, it's difficult for me to just say what Mind, The Fall of Paradise is outright, because that's up to you. There are different game modes that you can choose to play as. There's competitive, cooperative, solo, and how you decide to play depends on what factions you decide to play as. The game is sold in faction boxes. In this futuristic world of Mind, there's all these competing factions working either against each other or with each other on different planets, and that's what every faction box represents: Earth, Mars, Venus, and so on. And with more to come, of course, if the Kickstarter is successful. So every box is asymmetrical. So while some things are the same, the core rules of the game, every box has different scenarios, different citizens that you play with, structures, things like that, just different ways to get to your goals. And that ultimately is the goal. You are trying to raise up your little pocket civilization by meeting certain achievements. You're either going to do that individually, with one player getting the most by the end, or with everyone trying to get all the achievements cooperatively. Now, let me go ahead and give you a brief look at the game, showing you some promotional materials and things like that. And bear in mind that anything that you see here might change in the final version, and there actually might be additional stuff added to the game as the Kickstarter progresses and as it's more successful, so just keep that in mind. Then we're going to come back and we'll discuss it further.
Mind, The Fall of Paradise is a game that can be played either competitively, cooperatively, or solo. The game is played with faction boxes. Each box you purchase gets you one faction to play as, either Earth, Mars, Venus, or Mercury. Getting one box unlocks solo play, but for cooperative or competitive play, you need multiple factions, one for each player. All four factions have similar gameplay elements, except for the colony art and layout, the faction's superpower and leader, and different events and scenarios. This gives an asymmetrical bent to the game, because if you play with a different faction, you may have a completely different experience. Every player will be working under a different scenario with their faction. In order to come out on top, you will need to handle the different events that occur, as well as potential sabotage from the other players. To do this, you'll be activating the citizens you command, who each have different focuses and abilities, and the structures that you have built, by using command flags. Each player's goal is to acquire either the most achievements by the time the last round is over, or acquiring all 5 of them. For instance, by having 4 sectors, you can gain the Builder achievement, while the Seeker achievement demands that you have 10 fate total. In a cooperative game, every player must strive to gain every single achievement. If even one player doesn't get all their achievements, everybody's going to lose. You can choose to be a corrupt or an enlightened faction. This is dependent on what you do in the game to advance on the fate tracks, be it on the red track or on the green track. This affects your leader abilities and your winning conditions, as corrupt factions have immediate gains during the course of the game, but because of that, they tend to have a harder time actually gaining achievements because they need more stuff in order to do so. And achievements, remember, are the goal of the game. There's a lot of player interaction in the game as well. Players can sabotage and interfere with each other by doing things like starting fires in the colony, closing doors at critical junctions, stealing productions or bonuses, or even having their troops interfere. Alliances are made and people talk a lot about what everyone is doing at all times, as you need to be on guard and on the ball. Most of the decision making comes from knowing how to assign command flags to citizens or structures, as there are usually more flags than actual things to activate. You need to think of a plan to resolve the issues in your colony and also get closer to gaining the achievements with only the items that you have under your power. Influence is also very important in the game. You're going to use that to assign to citizens or structures as soon as you get it. Influence gives you access to the faction's superpower and also lets you roll an extra die per influence token. The more influence that something has, the more powerful its superpower will be. That, in just a brief nutshell, is Mind, The Fall of Paradise.
Now, the asymmetrical aspects of Mind, the Fall of Paradise are the most interesting thing about it, because what that means is that the game is potentially infinitely expandable by just continuing to add different faction packs into the game and giving you new scenarios, new leaders, new superpowers, all of these different types of things that are going to be different for each of the different factions, and they can all be mixed and matched with the original factions as well. It also gives you flexibility, because it means that you can just say, well, I like the premise of the game, but I don't have that many players in my game, and I'm the primary game buyer for the group, so I'm just going to buy one pack, see if I like it by playing it solo. Maybe that's all I'll ever buy. But you have the option. If you're like, wow, this is great, I want to play this with other people because I get more stuff in the game, more interaction, then you can buy more faction boxes, and depending on the size of your group. And as part of the Kickstarter, you can get discounts for ordering more of those faction packs, or potentially all of them all together, and get an even bigger discount. So just something to keep in mind. Now, speaking of the players and player interaction, that's another interesting aspect of the game, because it's not that you're playing, if you choose to play either competitively or cooperatively, you're not playing in a vacuum there by yourself with your faction. You can have influence on other people's factions. You can sabotage if you're in a competitive game. You can help each other if you're in a cooperative game. You form alliances, you discuss your options, things that you want to do, strategies, scenarios, all these different types of things. So again, you can play it solo if you want, but it does help if you have other people with you, because then you're going to get a more broader, fuller experience of the game. There are high quality components in the final version of the game, miniatures, things like that, all in the different faction colors depending on the faction box that you purchase. There's a lot of strategy and decision making in the game, because you have the structures that you build and choose to activate, as well as the different citizenry that you have, and you have to keep all of these things in mind as you're progressing, because you want to get those achievements. And that's another interesting aspect of the game, because you can choose to take the path of least resistance and become corrupt with your faction, which gives you more bonuses right away, but it makes it harder to get those achievements. So how much power are you willing to take as quickly as possible, but know that it's going to come back to haunt you later on in the game? Whereas if you just choose to be an enlightened faction, well, you're going to kind of be plodding along behind the people who choose to be corrupt. That's entirely up to you. So there's lots of decision making in the game. It's got an interesting science fiction theme, lots of different gameplay modes, lots of flexibility in how you choose to play and purchase the game. Just a lot to take in there, and there's far more than I could possibly tell you here. So please go to the Kickstarter page. There will be a link in the top corner of your screen, as well as down in the description section underneath this video. Those links will take you to the page. You can find out more information and hopefully consider backing the project. That is Mind, the Fall of Paradise from What We Make Games. Thank you so much for watching and for supporting our sponsors. Take care.
Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.